Hi, I'm John Griesbach with Diamond H2O. Today I want to go over the valve breakdown for the Patriot series water softener valves. This training will cover all Patriot water softener valves. However, the valves that we're going to be working on today are the 1 inch and 1.25 inch. First off, I want to start by quick ways for you to identify the difference between the 1.25 inch and the 1 inch externally, because the valve bodies are the same. The easiest way to identify it is on the left-hand side of the valve. The 1 inch has a black plug in the side of it. The 1.25 inch has a gray plug in the side of it. So just wanted to be able to show you that so you can identify if there's ever a question of which valve you have. Once you start tearing the valve apart, you'll easily identify the difference in size of internals. However, if you're trying to have the right part on hand, you can verify which pieces you need just by externally looking at the valve. Looking at the adapters isn't always the best way to identify the size that you have, since that can be anywhere from 3/4 inch all the way up to 1.5 inch on the back of one of these systems. So what I've actually got is I've got a cutaway valve here today to show you not only what's going on internally and some quick cheats as far as making sure that things are back together and tight enough once you're finished. But it also just allows us to visualize it a little bit better. So to start, I want to go through how to pull off the cover. You got two tabs on the side. Just separate them. Cover pulls right off the front. If you are standing on the unit or hitting it from the top, you always run the risk of peeling off a button or two. So again, we want to pull the cover off straight from the front. Next off, when you are going to service this valve, before you actually go and tear into it, start tearing things apart, checking the meter, doing anything of that nature, what you want to make sure of is that your valve is bypassed. Whether you have a 1 inch and 1.25 inch and you have the easy turn bypasses, these are arrows, they point in the direction of flow. To bypass, you turn them and point them at each other. If you have an 1.5 inch or 2 inch valve, you're going to have ball valves in line. You're going to want to make sure you isolate them, shut the water off before you start trying to service. That way you don't have a bunch of water spraying out at you. So first things first, you get the unit in bypass. The unit being bypassed, you're going to have, there's a number of different boards that you can have, so don't worry too much about the control that's on it. But what you're going to want to do is relieve the pressure. Now you can do this two ways. One way, you can power this, have the system powered up and press and hold the regeneration button, get it into a cycle. Once it's in bypass, that will relieve the pressure. The other way that you can do it is you can actually just squeeze the spring clip on the motor, remove the motor, and you've got this big white gear on the bottom. All you have to do is turn that, give it a couple turns, you're going to hear water relieve to the drain. Okay? Everyone always asks, what direction do you turn in? Just thread the piston in slightly. What's going to happen is it's going to run to the drain and the water will stop. Now at this point, you're typically powered down. To power the system down, you remove the power from the board here. You just unclip it. So now I'm going to actually move to the cutaway valve. The reason I did this on the regular valve is this one doesn't have a motor. It's been pretty stripped apart. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be removing the wires. And this valve, the design is such that you can put your index fingers on these tabs in the top. And once your index fingers are in the tabs in the top, your thumbs will be aligned with the clips to easily release this back plate. So you don't actually have to remove the circuit board. This whole back plate is removed. So I'm going to do that now. Put my index fingers on it, and thumbs release, your back plate releases. I'm going to go ahead and remove, this is your meter cable. I'm going to remove this. I'm going to set this in a safe place. Don't set it on top of the brine tank. Get it away somewhere where it's not going to get wet, not going to get dropped. So you set that to the side. What you're going to expose is you're going to expose your main drive gear, and then you've got the black wheel with the spokes. If you don't have this wrench, you can remove this piece with a large channel ox or a large pipe wrench. However, having this handy wrench is definitely a way to make your life a little bit easier. So what you're going to want to do is press your wrench onto the front, and you're going to just loosen this up. Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. It's going to come right off. Once you get it loose, this will thread right out. Again, make sure that you relieve the pressure before you try removing this. It's a lot easier that way, and you won't have the piston come shooting out at you. So to remove it, you thread it all the way out. Once you thread it out, you have your drive cap, you have your piston, then you have your brine piston. On a filter valve, the brine piston will not be there. So on a water softener, that's what you're going to have. This here is your stack assembly. Stack assembly may come out with the piston, depending on age, depending on wear and tear, depending on the condition of the internal seals. This cage assembly, the stack assembly, is one piece. If it ever comes out in two pieces, it's not designed that way. You're going to need to replace it. What you're going to be doing when you remove this is you're going to inspect the outer O-rings, which are black. You may have white seals on the inside. You may have black seals on the inside. They've made a seal change over the years, and the new ones are black. The old ones are white. But what you're going to be inspecting is mainly internally, these quad seals, is making sure that they are all complete, making sure that there's no lips or oxidation. Usually what you'll find if you're running to the drain or you're overflowing the brine tank, anything of that nature, you're typically going to find a tear in one of these or in multiple ones. If you find a tear, you don't replace the individual O-ring, you replace the stack. So you've got it all tore apart. To put it back together, stack assembly goes in. You'll see that on the cutaway here. You just insert it, press it in. Nothing exciting, it goes in very easy. Piston cap, whether you need it or don't need to replace, goes back in, very simple. I showed that, that stack assembly having some flex to it. The design of this valve is that by removing the front drive cap, you decompress your stack assembly. By tightening it down, you then compress your stack, and those O-rings then seal against the outside and against the inside against the piston. So what you're going to do is you're going to tighten this down. The luxury of the cutaway is you can see it compress. You can see that the stack assembly is tightening into the valve. What you're looking for is you want to make sure that these O-rings are compressed all the way in. If the drive cap is too loose, what will happen is these O-rings will leak by because they're not going to be in the right positions. They're not going to be tight and not in the right position. Now, because you don't have a cutaway valve on site, the best way for you to verify that you're getting tight enough is through your drain housing. So you can actually remove your drain housing. You got the red clip, you pull that off, and what you're feeling for is inside your drain housing, you're feeling from the back side, it should be smooth. Should be a smooth transition from the back side of your drain housing inside the valve to your stack assembly. And as you tighten this down, you can put your finger right in it. Even on top of a tank, this works quite well. Put your finger right in there and you just feel on the back side as you tighten it down to make sure that this transition is 100% smooth. That's going to indicate to you that this O-ring is then sealing on the back side here. If you ever get a brand new piston, brand new stack assembly, and you get it tightened down and you're leaking to the drain, there's a good chance that it's not tight enough. Rather than just over tightening or really wrenching on it, you can verify that by just feeling inside the drain housing. So got that all put back together, everything's tight. With your wrench, you can go ahead and put your drain adapter back on. Take your drive housing or drive bracket. Make sure your wires, so you're going to have a power wire, you're going to have a meter wire, you may have a interconnecting communication wire between the units. They're either going to be using these chaseways or they're going to be using a knockout in the lower lower right hand corner from your perspective. And the wires will be running through there. What you're going to want to do is just, if you're using these chaseways, make sure everything's pressed in there tight. That will allow us to clip the drive bracket back on. If those wires are loose, the drive bracket won't snap in completely and you'll get an error when you power it back up. So what you do is you get it aligned, make sure your piston isn't hitting on your board. Sometimes you need to just adjust things slightly and it'll clip back in. Clips into place. What you need to make sure of is just make sure these clips are all in all the way. Sometimes one side will clip in and the other side won't. That's usually an indication that the wire's in the way. Making sure those are clear, go ahead and reconnect all your cables, whether it's the interconnects, the meter cables, and then when you're all finished, make sure your drive motor is also reinserted. Again, you could do that as soon as you relieve the pressure initially. So you've got everything plugged back in. When you plug the power back in, it's going to do a soft reboot, so you're going to hear that piston shift. A lot of people are concerned that by moving the piston, it's not going to know where it is. It will reset itself automatically as soon as you reintroduce the power at the board here. If you unplugged it from the wall, it is not going to do a soft reset. You're going to want to make sure that you unplug it here and plug it back in. That's going to do the soft reset on the valve. So once you've got this all back in, you can turn the water back on and your rebuild should be complete. So if there's ever any questions, any concerns, if you need a wrench, you can always feel free to contact us